Well, today is also World Diabetes Day. Speaking of health, and over 4 million South Africans are currently living with the illness, with almost half of those undiagnosed. Now, the disease comes at a high personal and public cost. Back in 2018, experts had estimated that the public sector cost of undiagnosed type 2 diabetes was at 2.7 billion rand. And the Healthy Living Alliance is calling on government to increase the health promotion levy. This in order to reduce the overconsumption of sugar-sweetened beverages. Now, for more of this, I'm now joined by Nzama Mbalati from the Alliance. And Nzama, thank you so much for your time. A very warm good morning to you. I want to first start off with this number that we're seeing in both diagnosed and undiagnosed people living with diabetes, equally concerning in South Africa, and the work that still needs to be done to ensure that we fight diabetes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and really a very, very important discussion. We are actually impounded by the huge epidemic of diabetes. I think following up to Ronald Masinda's story, there are also amputations of advanced diabetes that are actually like a high burden for families and households. So we're talking about the epidemic that is growing significantly in this country, and I think we wanted the South African government to take responsibility in terms of regulating the food and beverage industries, similar to the cost that we have seen, from other industries like tobacco and alcohol. It's important that unhealthy products are regulated so that it can encourage and incentivize healthier alternatives in terms of the production of beverages, but also to cut on the overconsumption of sugar.
Yeah. Have you had an opportunity to engage with government? Because I know you're heavily advocating for the promotion, the promotion of health levy to the recommended 20%. But have you engaged with government as to what informs this delay that we're seeing so far?
Yeah, so we've engaged with government, National Department of Health, and HEALA has been behind supporting the South African government when they wanted to enact this law of putting the health promotion levy policy in place. We have been to Treasury. We've been to the Joint Standing Committee on Finance, again, appealing to them, giving them evidence and facts why this is important. What we have been getting from both Treasury and at the Portfolio Committee on Finance has been the fact that they want to be lenient to the sugar industry because of its struggles, other struggles that the sugar industry has had. But I think the biggest problem is, I think from our side, is that once they can allow that, what will happen one day if tobacco and alcohol can say, no, we don't need to be regulated. So I think it's key and important. And today we will be in Treasury. We're having a protest outside Treasury as a way of putting more pressure and be quite symbolic. So we'll be coming with wheelchairs, coffins, because we know diabetes, which overconsumption of sugar is actually primarily the leading factor, is problematic, and we think Treasury has to do enough to get us to that 20%.
Yeah. Let us perhaps, also educate our viewers here for a moment in terms of what leads to diabetes in some. And I think this is important because the stats are telling us here that there seems to be a huge difference in sweetened beverages intake between more and less educated adults in sub-Saharan Africa. So that tells us that when it comes to more educated adults and less educated adults, there's a difference in how they consume and intake, their beverages. So when it comes to what leads to diabetes, perhaps give us a bit of a background.
Yeah, that is a very important question, because then I will try to simplify the science of the relationship between overconsumption of sugar and diabetes. You will know that if you eat a fruit, you do get sugar, but that is a natural sugar. So sugar is a big problem if we overconsume it in a liquid format, because what happens is that, the science in that biology, when we learn that, there's a conversion, by insulin in our body, of energy, because sugar is just energy. It's nothing. So what happens with the overconsumption is that our body starts to struggle to break down the sugar for the absorption of that energy, and that it ends up building into our vital organs, and it can also lead to diabetes, heart diseases, cardiovascular diseases, and some cancers. So that is the science behind that, the simplified science behind that, because sugar is problematic in a liquid format. That's why even the health promotion levy started with, the cold drinks, because the biggest problem with sugar is when it's in a liquid format.
Right.
When you eat a fruit, you still get natural sugar with fiber. Your body is able to actually absorb that sugar. That sugar doesn't become excess in the body and build up into your vital organs and lead to a...
Absolutely, because I think at times when we often inform viewers or South Africans from a stance of don't do this, the messaging cannot perhaps resonate as opposed to when it's from a point of understanding that, oh, I grew up thinking that cold drink is a nice beverage because we see it at birthday parties when we celebrate and we all want to, have nice things, and sometimes we want to probably overconsume cold drink. But now I understand from a point of understanding why this is bad for my body. It's also bad for the body, Nzama, because I understand the cost of diabetes is also high, the personal cost, because diabetes, from my understanding, is a multi-organ disease. So when it's time to treat it, that could be a cost to you that perhaps you may not have even, budget for, and that you don't even need. It's not necessary.
Certainly. So the cost of diabetes into the healthcare itself,
right,
to the state, is high. We understand that. And that's why in the bigger scope of things, when you have industry that comes and lobby and say, no, we'll have this problem of jobs and we'll have this problem of this, the industry needs to reformulate, because my sister is diabetic. The cost that comes, she has a script of a strict diet that she must eat. That is not cheap. She needs to travel, 10 kilometers to a public health facility. And that's money in the household. She needs to prepare food on the side that has less sugar, has less salt, has less fat, because she has a script. And that brings, the amount of money in the grocery at home, it goes high. So the cost of diabetes is so high. And sometimes she has ill health because her sugar level, it either has gone up, and she needs an emergency, to be taken to hospital at that point in time. So this is a dire and a big epidemic that we need to tackle. That the way in which we have looked at other epidemics we have dealt with, such as COVID, such as HIV. We need to take diabetes seriously. The numbers are staggering. And I think we need to have like a comprehensive approach. And we know that taxation and having levies to discourage people and incentivize manufacturers to reduce sugar in the beverages, it's one of the important tools in our toolbox to address diabetes.
Absolutely. Also, when you spoke about your sister, I think the advantage is that she knows, she has been diagnosed, she's treating it, she knows what she has to deal with. There's an alarming number of those who are undiagnosed. I want you to talk to me about the importance of regular checkups and making sure that in as much as we're putting pressure on government, as human beings, as people, we also take responsibility upon our own lives and our own health. And we make sure that we actually know what our bodies have the capacity to handle and what they cannot handle, and how to therefore prevent or treat diseases. How important is it to check for diabetes?
Very important. It's very important that, behavioral change needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we have been doing as Healthy Living Alliance is to build the knowledge of the science and the politics of nutrition through nutrition literacy in communities, because that is important. In as much as government regulation is important, it's very, very important that we raise awareness, and people have to change behavior in terms of like overconsumption, because the biggest the overconsumption. Before my sister was diabetic, she would take a 2 liter of cold drink because she was pre-diabetic and she didn't know. And I think because also the stigma that we must raise, because one of the things that happened that she lost massive weight. She lost a lot of weight. And because of the stigma around surrounding HIV and the fear, she tested late. So I think it's important that we can make the diagnostics and the testing of diabetes available and closer to communities, and people need to uptake the service of testing diabetes, because pre-diabetic is dangerous, because when you can collapse, you can have stroke at the same time when you don't know you are pre-diabetic. So I think it's very, very important that we scale up and people have to uptake the services of diagnostic of diabetes.
Couldn't agree there more with you. Also, just back to your point regarding you still staging a protest and picket, quite important in terms of sending a very strong message across, because I understand, Nzama, you're saying that the food and beverage industry will always look out for their own interests, and government needs to make sure that they look out for the interests of the people. What would your message be to the food and beverage industry, if at all they would listen? Because, I mean, I'm sure they're putting profits ahead, which is what you are seeing. Hence, there's still more, sugar in most of our food, or even processed food, young children buying sweets at tuck shops, etc. But it seems that you also, while having this message for government, what would your message be as well to these industries that are big conglomerates, and this is where all of us buy the food that we consume from?
Yeah, I think the food and my message to the food and beverage industry will be clear: work and help South Africans to get affordable and nutritious food. There's no use for pushing profits at the expense of people's health and giving people food that have poor nutrition and is energy heavy, and seeing the epidemic and the disease. And I think people will wake up one day and people will start realizing that it's important to look after their health. Again, government has given a huge window period for the sugar industry to implement the sugar master plan. The biggest issue is that where is transparency and accountability in terms of diversification, of sugarcane into ethanol. The BRICS countries, and we did have a lot of communication around this, like why is South Africa not following the counterparts? So Brazil and India,
right,
in terms of the BRICS, are also countries that are heavily sugar reliant and have employment through the sugar industry. Why don't we follow the lead? Why are we always calling for lenience? Why are we always putting profit? And we're not moving into diversification. We're not moving into the accountability of the sugar master plan. Where is the sugar master plan? Where is the public transparency in ensuring that this is what we have implemented in the sugar master plan? So I think that is the thing that I think it's their message will fall into deaf ears. We know that they lobby, and they lobby heavily, because we also know that there are also some decision makers in one way or the other who are connected and having investment into the sugar industry. But I think we are not going to stop in calling this out, and we hope they can work with government and look at also, having alternatives in terms of healthier options and reducing the sugar in the food and beverages, because at the end of the day, if you look at the amount of sugar we have in the diet, so that will include the beverages, that will include a cold drink, that will include an energy drink, that will include, your breakfast cereal, that will include your chocolate, so the amount of sugar in a day that a person having a food that is energy and sugar dense. At the end of the day, we need to actually create alternative and make sure that we can produce food that is affordable and that cannot make people to be sick.
Right. Before I let you go, with the risk of, sounding pessimistic, should your calls fall on deaf ears, what happens next? You will be picketing today, but should still the call in terms of increasing that health promotion levy to 20% not be responded to with the urgency that you require it to be, what are the next steps then?
I think we are willing to go many more next steps. That might also include, as an option, we're not going to, civil disobedience. That is also going to go into political parties' manifestos in terms of like, where is nutrition? And the relationship between food and health. Where is the right to food in your manifestos? And going into next year's elections, and we will continue to mobilize society to understand this issue, because I think there is a lack of understanding. Before tobacco was regulated, everyone now knows the risk associated with smoking because tobacco is regulated. And one of the things we understand with what we have been calling to label the food that has excess sugar, salt, and fat, that can make people who are even illiterate to read the back of the package to understand what is in their food. So we'll continue to mobilize society, we'll continue to engage, but where engagement fails, we will look at alternatives such as even civil disobedience and going to the political parties that actually have deployed the people and educate them and to make them understand, because they're only getting message from the sugar and food industry, food and beverage industry.
We'll leave it there. Nzama Mbalati, thank you so much for joining us right here on a news link from Healthy Living Alliance, calling for government to not waste any more time and assist with the rates of diabetes that we're seeing in the country, saying that they have to increase the promotion of health levy to 20%. This will, of course, regulate sugar and its consumption in the country, because when it comes to both diagnosed and undiagnosed stats, in as far as diabetes is concerned, the numbers are quite staggering, reaching their millions. People are dying, lives are being altered because of this sugar that is in beverages. And of course, more needs to be done to discourage people from drinking these beverages and also eating these sweetened processed foods.